Westbrook. You love the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me get a hell yeah!
Hey, what's up, guys? What's going on? It is Deibs, Mr. Crockpot on Twitter. Welcome to Party on Broad. The Party on Broad podcast can be found on iTunes and Spotify. Smash that subscribe button, guys, if you are watching us on YouTube. Today, we are talking about the New York Giants. We're talking about how they match up with our Philadelphia Eagles. And joining us today is Patricia Traina. Make sure you check out GiantsCountry.com and check out her LockedOn Giants podcast. You can find that pod anywhere you find your pods, or iTunes, of course. And joining me today is, of course, our co-host. He is Rob. Check him out on Twitter at Philly_Madness. How you doing, man?
Doing great, man. I see what you're doing here by having us record this the night before we have a draft, and you're taking me away from draft study so that I can't be supposed to be champion. Listen, me and JR have a gripe with the last draft, okay, because our teams were phenomenal, and we had to face off in the second round, which was nonsense, okay? So we are coming after everyone in this draft, and I see what you're doing. Pull me away from my draft study.
Love it, yeah. Quick, so everyone knows, we're holding a GOAT squad draft, the best NBA players of all time, and can you create the best starting five in NBA history? We're holding that draft. It was just like the same concept of our Philly sports draft. We're holding that draft on Wednesday night, tomorrow night, if you're watching us here on Tuesday. And also joining us today is my man, JR. Check him out on Twitter at JohnRussell215. What's going on, JR?
Not much. I'm excited to talk some Giants football. I never know who I hate more, Cowboys or Giants. You know, I don't really know the Washington R words. I don't even think of them as a real team. But the Giants and Cowboys go back and forth who I hate the most. So this should be fun.
Awesome. So, yeah, we're going to talk to Patricia, the top storylines for the New York Giants this offseason. What are the key matchups between the Eagles and the Giants in 2020? And then we're going to wrap it up because it is everywhere right now with a little Deshaun Jackson talk. So we're going to run the interview, and we'll see you after the interview for Deshaun Jackson. Thanks, guys. All right, guys, please give a warm welcome to our special guest tonight. She is the senior writer of GiantsCountry.com and host of daily LockedOn Giants podcast. You can find that podcast on iTunes or anywhere you find your podcasts. Please give her a follow on Twitter at Patricia_Traina. Welcome to the show, Patricia. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining the Party on Broad podcast. All right, so today we are talking about the Giants. We're going to preview everything and anything New York Giants heading into 2020. And I think any discussion in regard to the New York Giants and that 2020 season begins at the top. Patricia, what's the local media stance on first-year head coach Joe Judge? And what are some of the differences you have seen so far between him and Pat Shurmur?
Well, one thing off the bat with Joe Judge is he has a plan. And so far, even though, it's been an unusual offseason to say the least, he has basically stuck to that plan. And that plan is, he knows what kind of identity he wants to see this team take. He's been no nonsense. He has, laid down expectations, and he's allowed for a little bit of, organic stuff to come along, because obviously you can't control everything, but he's very detailed, very focused. But most of all, I think the biggest thing with him is he's not wishy-washy. Pat Shurmur was a good guy and everything, but just wishy-washy, I thought. So I would say that's probably the biggest difference. And then the other thing is that Joe Judge is not afraid to admit what he doesn't know, which I think a lot of people respect. And by that, I mean is he didn't come in here, saying, okay, I'm going to be the offensive play caller, or I'm going to be the defensive play caller. He came in here, he hired people who are, have experience in that. And he's going to be the CEO type of head coach that this team really hasn't had since Tom Coughlin.
Patricia, you talk about the people he hired on offense. He obviously brings in former head coach of Dallas Cowboys, Jason Garrett, to run that offense, and that pairs him with second-year quarterback Daniel Jones. So this means Daniel Jones in the second year is switching systems. What is your confidence level in Daniel Jones in 2020 in a Jason Garrett offense?
Oh, I think he's going to do pretty well. Daniel Jones has been studying this going back to basically when Judge and Garrett were hired. And, I had a chance to speak with David Cutcliffe at Eli Manning's retirement ceremony back in January before the world got shut down as we know it. And Coach Cutcliffe actually, we were talking about Daniel Jones, and he was kind of laughing a little bit. He says, yeah, here we are. We're on the plane. And you know how they tell you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight. And there's Daniel. He's got his tray table down, and he's spread out all these play sheets, and he's got his iPad, and he's studying and watching YouTube videos that he downloaded and all that stuff. So I just thought that was kind of funny. He basically threw himself into studying and learning that offense as best as he could, obviously. He's a smart guy. He's a guy who knows what it takes to prepare. I think he learned a lot from Eli Manning, and I feel pretty good about, him learning it. Now, is he going to overcome some of the problems that he had last year? That remains to be seen. But as far as grasping it and learning it, I think he's going to be fine.
Patricia, when we're looking at the Giants roster, it kind of reminds me of the Eagles roster, and we're both relying on a lot of young talent to develop somewhat quickly. And us having this really shortened offseason, how do you feel up there in East Rutherford with that team and how they're going to do with having such a short offseason and able to get everybody on the same page?
It's interesting. Everybody obviously is in the same boat, but what I would say where the Eagles maybe had the advantage is you guys have the same coaching staff. So everything is, I don't want to say it's going to be brand new. I'm sure there's going to be some wrinkles that Coach Peterson and his assistants are going to throw in there, but it's not like you're starting all over from scratch. It's not like the players have to learn a new language and they have to learn to play fast. I think that's going to give the Eagles an advantage that the Giants don't necessarily have, that Washington doesn't have, and that you can even say Dallas doesn't have. So that would be, my biggest concern with the new coaching staff. Now, with that said, I know Coach Judge has spoken about, using the virtual offseason program to bring guys up to speed. He believes that if you kind of understand the concepts behind what you're doing, the idea is when you hit the field, you should be able to hit the ground running. We all know that's not necessarily the case. We know that, for example, if we've never ridden a bicycle before, we know how to operate a bicycle, but just because we know how to operate it doesn't mean we know how to actually do it until we actually do it. So that's where I see the biggest difference there between, say, the Giants and the Cowboys and Washington and the Eagles.
I got to say, I do like how they're surrounding Joe Judge with all the coaches there. Lots of experience. Let's talk about the offensive line a little bit. The Giants surrendered the most amount of pressures on that offensive line in 2019, I believe. Talk to us a little bit about top pick Andrew Thomas, and how do you see him making an impact this season?
I love that pick. That was actually the guy I had for the Giants about 2 weeks before the draft. After, listening to Dave Gettleman, the general manager, and just kind of keeping my ears to the ground, that was my pick for the Giants. He's the safest of the picks. And the thing about Andrew Thomas that I think they really like is they can plug him in at right tackle. Even though he played left tackle for most of his college career, he's not that far removed from when he played right tackle. And, initially I thought, okay, they drafted him. It makes sense. Just put him right at left tackle and don't futz around. But I think what makes more sense now, and after thinking about it, is you put him on the right side next to Kevin Zeitler, who was their most consistent offensive lineman, and let him learn there. Will Hernandez, the left guard, he's a promising player, but he had his struggles last year. He didn't quite take the step a lot of people thought that he would. So, even though Nate Solder struggled, and I still say he struggled partially because he was injured and they just didn't, publicize it. You let Hernandez sit next to Solder for another year. You put Thomas on the right side, let him learn from Zeitler. And then next year, you figure they're going to move on from Solder, and then you flip Thomas over to the left side, which is going to be his long-term position.
I guess, Patricia, you're in a better situation than us. You actually liked the Giants draft picks early. I, on the other hand, did not like the Eagles draft picks, but that's neither here nor there. But let's move to the other side of the football and the defensive line. It didn't seem to be a priority during the draft or free agency for the Giants. Why don't you tell us some of the young talent that they have there already in-house, and is there anyone there that you could see becoming an elite pass rusher as early as this year?
Well, the Giants are going to be based in a 3-4, but they're going to be multiple. And we all know, that word can mean many different things. It's as multiple as the word itself. But I think what defensive coordinator Patrick Graham is going to try to do is he's going to have his guys up front, his big bodies, BJ Hill, Dalvin Tomlinson, Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams, to an extent that he's going to try and have them take up multiple blockers, which will open up opportunities for some of the, the 9 wides and the 5 techs that they, line up. So guys you want to keep an eye on, obviously, O'Shane Zimenez, who was their 3rd round pick last year, that one of the picks they acquired in the Odell Beckham Jr. trade. Lorenzo Carter is a guy, another 3rd round pick. I think he was the 3rd round pick, I want to say 2 years ago. So he's another one they're looking to really step up. And then they could have Marcus Golden back. I mean, Marcus Golden, as you guys probably know, they tendered with that rare, I don't know, I guess it's the UFA tender is what it's called. So if he does not sign with a team by the start of the first training camp, his rights revert back to the Giants. So he's another guy that they can, potentially look at. I don't know that they necessarily have a guy who's going to be like, to use Dave Gettleman's term, a blue goose pass rusher. I think they're going to be looking for the committee. And the idea, what they told us a lot during the spring and into this, the draft and whatnot, they said, look, sacks are great if we can get them and we want them, don't get us wrong. But if we can disrupt quarterbacks, if we can, contain mobile quarterbacks, keep them in the pocket, force them to make throws before they're ready, create mistakes, that's just as good as a sack. If you think about it, if you get turnovers, that's just as good as a sack. So that's what I think, they're kind of taking the I guess I call it the runner-up theory, because I'd rather have the sacks, but I see where they're coming from with that theory. And it's, I guess it's not a bad idea if you think about it.
All right, Patricia, take a little trip down memory lane. I know we used to, as Eagles, would draft cornerbacks to kind of counteract what other people in the division were doing. I know the Sheldon Brown and Lito Shepherds were brought in to kind of counteract the Plexico Burris and Des Bryant type players that we saw in our division. This year, we saw the Cowboys and the Eagles both take wide receivers in the first round. You guys kind of went opposite, and you took a cornerback. Is that something that you see is going to be really big in the next 5 to 10 years, a nice rivalry of cornerback wide receiver going on that the Giants and Eagles had doing?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I mean, how many times last year the Giants, their pass defense was awful. Let's call it for what it is. I mean, it was just terrible. They had to shore that up. And, you asked about the pass rush in the previous question. Part of the pass rush is making sure you can hold your coverage on the back end, which the Giants could not do. And there were many times I thought that, they came close with the pass rush only to let it slip away because, they couldn't hold the coverage on the back end. So, you look at the game and how it's evolving, and it's all about speed. You look at what Dallas has added. I mean, Washington has McLaurin. It's all about speed. And if you don't have speed on the back end of your defense, you're going to struggle. You're going to suffer. And Giant fans saw that last year. I mean, it was frustrating how many times, for example, we saw the free safety get beat deep. And, you'd sit there and you pull out your hair and go, oh, my God, they got to have somebody faster. I mean, I can remember sitting there screaming, I can run faster than him, and I have 2 bad knees, So yeah, I do think, it's going to make for some really good matchups in the division, not just between the Giants and the Eagles, but just in the division, because you've got to match speed with speed.
Are you at all worried that Baker, you got in the first round, only has he said 7 career interceptions in 4 years at Georgia? Is that something that the Giants want him to get more of a ball hawk mentality, or what are we expecting from this guy?
Well, as you might have heard, he's dealing with some legal issues. He was involved in that unfortunate incident down in Miramar, Florida, back in May, where he was arrested and accused of armed robbery and aggravated assault. That case, to my knowledge, has not yet been resolved. I know his attorney last month had said something about, he was confident that all charges would be dropped. That is not the case. So Baker, I really don't think he's going to be available to them this year. So that brings up another kind of dilemma, if you will, for the Giants, because they signed James Bradbury, who's, believe it or not, I thought was just as, if not more productive as Byron Jones. And I did the statistical breakdown Bradbury was in fewer opportunities than Byron Jones, was just as productive, if not more, in some categories. But now on the opposite end, your primary candidates are either going to be Corey Ballantyne, who I believe he was a sixth rounder last year, or you go with Sam Beal, who was their third round pick in the supplemental draft a couple of years ago. So you're talking about a lot of inexperience there. And in the case of Sam Beal, this is a guy who has a lot of talent, but who cannot stay healthy. I mean, he missed his rookie season because of a shoulder injury that he needed surgery starting in training camp. And then last year, he missed half the season with a hamstring strain. And then when he came back, he missed the last game of the season with, I think, a shoulder injury as well. So a lot of uncertainty. And I think right now, if I had to take a guess, I would think Ballantyne might be the better fit, would be my guess. But again, a lot of inexperience there. And I fully anticipate a lot of teams are going to go after whoever does play that corner spot.
Going back to the offensive side of the football, one of the best stories for the Giants in 2019 was Darius Slayton. What are your expectations for this guy? And do you think this guy has it in him to become a number one wide receiver this coming year?
I think he could. I do think so. I think what Jason Garrett is looking to do is he's looking to kind of adapt that Air Coryell that Air Coryell offense that he ran in Dallas, which is based on a lot of vertical concepts. So right now, if you look at the Giants in terms of true speed and separation, Darius Slayton has it. He was really the only guy I thought who consistently was able to separate deep down the field. Now, Golden Tate, you look at him, and you guys know because he, you used to have him on the Eagles. He was pretty good at, getting the yards after the catch. But as far as separating, I'm sure you can recall plenty times where you'd say, oh, I wish he had, separated a little bit more than what he did. So, and Sterling Shepard, he's always been good over the middle, but I've always thought of him to be more productive as a slot receiver. And we saw his numbers dip a little bit last year because he didn't play as much in the slot. They basically played Tate in the slot. But as far as Darius Slayton, I do like the promise that young man brings. And what I especially like is how he improved. I remember when he first got to camp, we're watching practice and he dropped everything. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I can't believe they wasted a pick on this guy. And he got better and better and better. Now, if he learns to run a little crisper, if he tightens up his routes a little bit better, I think he's going to be, that much better going forward.
Yeah, staying on the offense, obviously everyone knows the talent that Saquon Barkley is, and he's just at the tops of the league. But with how a running back's lifespan is not the longest when it comes to the NFL, is it ever a question, or is it becoming a question up there in New York of how important it is for the Giants to become a contender and in the conversation now, so to speak, so that for a couple things. First of all, you just don't know with these running backs when the lifespan's up. I know he's still got plenty of time, but you also have to ask the question when Saquon comes up on a contract extension, if they still haven't been able to get over that hump and get into the conversation, is that going to be a problem? Are these questions ever posed, and do you think they should start getting posed?
Oh, absolutely. I was just thinking about it the other day, as a matter of fact. Look, under Pat Shurmur, I honestly can't say that they use Saquon Barkley to his fullest potential. There were, this guy can burn a linebacker or defensive back in coverage. I mean, he can match up with these guys. And yet, we saw him run these wheel routes and split out wide and do all these fancy, exotic looking things that got you excited. And then we get to a game and you'd sit there and what would happen? He'd get a dink and a dunk type of, game. And it was frustrating. So, I feel like we don't really know what the Giants have in Saquon Barkley because they haven't used him to his fullest potential. And to me, if you were to say to me right now, well, would you extend Barkley? I would say, look, he's an outstanding runner, no question. You look at the fact that he got over 1,000 yards last year behind the offensive line that he had to work with, which, as you guys know, wasn't very good. He earned every one of those yards, but I would be a little reluctant to give him a huge contract right now, like what Christian McCaffrey got. Because with McCaffrey, you at least see the full range of what he brings to the table. You haven't seen that with Barkley. You know that he's capable of doing that. And, if he's put in the right position, I think he will be able to do that. But based on what we have seen so far, I would say I would be a little reluctant to give him a big payday right now. Now, next year, we can have this conversation again and see, how he does in Jason Garrett's offense. But, Barkley, we need to see more because I don't think they've unlocked his potential.
All right, Patricia, kind of round it up right here. I know it's early. It's literally only July. And take out coaching. I don't want to talk about, because you already touched on it, but who do you think in the Eagles-Giants matchup going forward has an advantage? And has anything changed in this offseason to sway you in one point or the other?
Wow. That's a good one. Usually I like to kind of wait to see how rosters shape up. And who knows if we're even going to have a season, to be honest with you. But, I mean, the Eagles have always been a thorn in the Giants' side. I mean, I cannot remember. I want to say 2015 maybe was the last time the Giants won in Philadelphia. I'm just going off the top of my head. I know it's been a while. I know, playing at the Link has been a house of horrors for the Giants. It's just, they go there and they just get embarrassed. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just the mojo that comes from the crowd or just, they're cursed. I really don't. I do think, I would like to think that maybe there won't be as many lopsided games moving forward. But it's hard to say because, see, you said not to include coaching, but I would need to know schemes and I would need to know basic concepts and stuff like that. I know what the Eagles are capable of doing and how they're able to, be creative, how Doug Peterson has tricks up his sleeve. And I've seen him outfox several coaches. So it's kind of hard for me to separate the coaching from that without seeing what the Giants, how they think and whatnot. But I would say at this point, let's call it even based on, because, it's a toss up, I think.
Awesome. That is Patricia Traina. Make sure you check out GiantsCountry.com. Check out the Locked On Giants podcast. Check it out on iTunes, anywhere you find your pods, and follow Patricia on Twitter at Patricia_Traina. Thanks for your time, Patricia. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Patricia.
Thank you, Patricia.
Thanks.
All right, guys, we are back, and unfortunately, this is Philadelphia. These are the Philadelphia Eagles, and you can't get past a day without the shit hitting the fan, man. It's just when things seem to get rolling and good, this happens. So, Rob, talk a little bit about what went down today regarding Deshaun Jackson.
Well, you see this all the time in the social media world, right? Where guys repost things they see. They're not really educated on what they're posting. They really are. Sometimes, look, you see this with not just athletes, but with regular people, right? We let our emotions get the best of us, and the first thing we turn to do is post something on social media. And a lot of the times, we don't check it, we don't look at it, we don't take that step back and think about what we're posting. And Deshaun Jackson posted, a couple different things, but the one that's standing out is what's being, I guess, reported as an old Hitler quote, and it's very anti-Semitic, and it happened, and then all of a sudden, as things do in the age of social media, it took off. What I think probably, look, it's bad enough on its own, but then he tried to double down on it in a sense prior to an apology, which really made it look bad. And this is really an ugly situation at a time in our country right now where everybody's under a microscope, and as well they should be. Everybody should be under a microscope right now, right? Because a lot of things are being brought to light. And for Deshaun Jackson to be this careless with a post is very, very upsetting. And, I want everybody to talk about it as we kind of go back and forth with our points here. But so that's kind of the crux of what happened. The Eagles have put out a statement. Deshaun has now made a video apology, very a la Drew Brees video apology right after a statement. So I'm curious what everybody thinks, and then I'll pop in from time to time here.
Go ahead, JR.
And I had a tough time with this. I recorded a Blurred Lines podcast earlier today about it, and it took me I'm going to be honest, it took about 15 takes because I didn't know what line to toe. I kept going back to Riley Cooper because that's so easy to do because you could put the two in the same. You have two athletes here in Philly who spouted off at the mouth. There's a lot of people calling for Deshaun to be cut. One of them is one of the guys who used to run our team, and Joe Banner. Joe Banner was involved on our team when Riley Cooper was on the team, and they didn't cut Riley Cooper. They waited until we got rid of the coach to get rid of Riley Cooper. So I think the precedent has been set that the Eagles made a statement saying that they're going to do whatever they can to get behind Riley Cooper and help him become a better person. And I think they should do the exact same thing with Deshaun. He made a mistake, dude. He messed up. Deshaun Jackson doesn't believe that Jewish people are terrible like Hitler thought. Like, he doesn't believe that at all. What he did was he was looking for answers to some social questions. He went down a rabbit hole. Looking up an anti-Semite like Louis Farrakhan was very stupid with not knowing who he is and what he represents and the divide that he presents as his argument. And I think Deshaun, he got to eat his words, and he's going to get punished. He's probably going to get fined, which should happen. But in no way should he get cut or separated from this football team. I mean, we just lost Malcolm Jenkins and Jason Peters. We don't have many leaders in that locker room.
Yeah. And
we got a very young receiving core, and they're going to look to Deshaun Jackson for motivation and wisdom, and he's got to learn from this, and he's got to be the leader that we need him to be for us to be successful.
I mean, talk about the worst position for this to happen. I'm just talking about just on the field strictly. Like, you cannot have Deshaun Jackson get cut. That cannot happen. Everyone knows here that I'm one of the biggest Jalen Reagor fans there are. I mean, there are major implications here if Deshaun Jackson gets cut and what have you. Like, Rob, what is your expectation? What are the Eagles going to do? I don't believe anything has been done yet. What's your expectation?
No, nothing has been done. My expectation is, without a doubt, a fine. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a suspension, but I do not believe he will get cut. And JR hit this right on the head. As an organization, okay, you set a precedent years ago when Riley Cooper is on video screaming an obscenity at an African-American man, okay? And you did not cut him in that time. Now, I'm not trying to say and I understand, JR, why this is tough to say because you don't want to say the wrong thing here. This is awful what he did. But what he did was he reposted something without taking that look at it. He's not on video doing what Riley Cooper did, and you saw how they handled the Riley Cooper situation. I expect it to be somewhat similar, but I do expect a little more from this standpoint. 2020, just from a societal view, is a little bit different than it was 5 or 6. As far as and I say this positively, the sensitivity to certain issues, which we should be more sensitive to these issues, in my opinion. So they're going to have to maybe take a tougher stance, but I agree with both of you. I don't see him getting cut here. He actually put out another statement today, Deshaun Jackson, talking about he's already reached out to a local rabbi, that he's going to be getting involved in the community here. So you already see the necessary steps being taken. And I think at the end of the day, a fine is probably for certain. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of a suspension. But right now, what is a suspension right now? We don't even know when this team's in the building again. You know what I mean? So everything's up in the air. But I agree with Jay. I agree with you. I just cannot see them cutting him from a financial perspective, from every perspective across the board. I don't see releasing him to be an answer here.
Go ahead, Joe.
When Riley said what he said, that was, like you said, caught on camera. That's spur of the moment. That is your inner feeling and thought coming out and getting captured on camera. Mm-hmm. Deshaun putting something on social media is what is supposed to be a predetermined thought. It's supposed to be, researched and thought out. That's what he did is something I would expect young Deshaun to do, coming out of the West Coast in Cal. Do that, but not a leader, not a guy who I'm expecting to unify this locker room. Because when Riley Cooper did it, it completely shut that locker room into two.
Yeah,
and people were taking sides.
Yep.
I don't know necessarily that that's what's going to happen here, but even the fact that this might be a little a flare up or an injustice in the locker room, we can't have that. Deshaun's got to be smarter. You got to be a leader, dude. And that's where I'm disappointed. I'm not mad at him to kick him off the team. I'm mad that you got to learn. You need to be a leader, bro. You need to lead these kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my whole take is not just strictly on the field again. Is Jalen Reagor needs to, learn under Deshaun Jackson. When they first drafted Jalen Reagor, when I picked Jalen Reagor was going to be picked by the Eagles back in like January, he is the perfect guy to be mentored under Deshaun Jackson. So like I'm just having like nightmares of this locker room between Alshon and Deshaun, and like I couldn't agree more, JR. Like, where are the leaders? Go ahead, Rob.
Well, listen, one of the big things, and Chris, I said this here, I said it on the Madness, I said it everywhere. When you let Malcolm Jenkins go, you lost a huge leader, and I don't care who you are, I don't care if they're professionals, leadership matters, and you're right. And listen, a couple things I just wanted to bring up. First of all, kudos to Jeffrey Lurie, okay? For like Jeffrey Lurie is a Jewish man, okay? And he could have reacted right away and just released it. But Jeffrey Lurie's also a smart man. I think he's a man who accepts flaws in people and knows that it's better to educate than just necessarily cut ties. You've seen this with this organization going back to Michael Vick, right? I mean, remember when Michael Vick was signed? This team lost fans for that, but it was a reconciliation. They made a decision with Riley Cooper to make it a reconciliation. And I think Deshaun Jackson, he has a history in this city. I think you're going to see another reconciliation project here. And I don't think it's going to create dissension in the locker room. I really don't. I think this locker room has shown that they're unified. I think if you look at Carson Wentz and Zach Ertz in the past few weeks with their public statements, for people and society, I think all in all, and I'm trying not to sound like I am condoning what Deshaun did, because he absolutely has to be held accountable for this. But I don't think releasing him in this situation is the answer. And for people saying, oh, well, you're just saying that because of how good of a player he is. He played 3 games last year, guys. He's an injury-prone wide receiver at the end of the career. This isn't about a playmaker for me. This is just about the way I feel about the situation. We need to stop cutting people out that make these mistakes in life, and we need to educate them. And I think that's what the Eagles are going to choose to do.
Well said.
My last thing I wanted to know, because there's an article right out in the Inquirer by David Murphy, who is a phenomenal writer. I hold him in high praise. I met him a couple times. Great dude. But in this article, he called Deshaun ignorant like 4 or 5 times. Okay. Now, I don't think Deshaun Jackson is an ignorant person. I think what he said was very ignorant, but I don't think in his heart of heart he's an ignorant person. I mean, this is also the same Deshaun Jackson who we cut because Chip Kelly thought he had gang affiliations. Like, Deshaun Jackson is not an ignorant person. He's not in gangs. He fucked up and said something stupid. Sorry if I can't say that, Rob. But, Chris,
no, you're good.
He's not an ignorant person. He said something ignorant, and that just goes off what Rob just said. We got to learn to forgive and talk about it and listen. I want to know why Deshaun was looking up Furcon quotes. I want to know why he was reading Hitler quotes.
Well, see, like I said, the Hitler quote, I think, is something somebody sends him and he posts it without knowing what it is. The Farrakhan it's what that guy sells off of, right? He sells off of, let's say something, let's bait, let's eat on prey on people's fears. And when people are angry, such as Deshaun Jackson and many in the black community right now, they see these things and it doesn't all necessarily come into fruition what is being said, right? Because there's so much anger blocking them. And that's what a guy like a Farrakhan preys on. And it bit Deshaun in the ass. He's going to have to answer for it, and he should have to answer for it.
Awesome. All right, so make sure you follow Rob on Twitter at @Philly_Madness. Check out the Madness podcast with Jessica Town. Anything you want to plug with the Madness, man?
Me and Jess are having a meeting this week. We are going to figure out a night and time to do the live broadcasting.
Nice.
Thanks to you. We're going to kind of relaunch our show a little bit, as it's kind of got a little mishmash here with the quarantine. But we do have an episode up. We did an episode last week, so you can head over to the YouTube page and check that out right now. We had a lot of fun with that. So
awesome. And JR, talk a little bit about the Blurred Lines podcast.
Honestly, it's just a place for me to rant. And I'm tired of going on CNN or MSNBC or Fox, anything. And you sit and you listen to these people have their own show. and they do segments in 10-minute segments, and they talk about an opinion. And I think their opinion is just terrible because all the people on TV are probably 60 to 70 years old, and I don't really relate with any of them, what they're saying. So I said, let me have my own. And the Painted Lines, Brian said, let's do it. You got a great beat on it. So let's see. The newest one I got out is on tipping your servers and bartenders, all right?
Of course.
So, of course, I got to throw something like that in there to start it up. But it's a fun podcast. It's only 10 minutes. If you're running a Wawa or something, just throw it on and see if you agree or don't.
Awesome. So, make sure you hit that subscribe button here, guys, at the Painted Lines YouTube channel. For Rob, for JR, for Patricia. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay awesome.
Love you guys.
See you guys.
Sixers win it! Wow! Oh man, and being just posterized, Russell Westbrook.